Welcome, everybody, to Learn with Lowell. Today, we are joined with Dr. Anais, a global thinker and technology explorer who has spent the last decade unraveling the mysteries of how technology influences our minds and society. With her captivating talks spanning across the globe and treasure trove of thought-provoking articles, she dives deep into the realms of cybernetics, artificial intelligence, and the powerful technologies that shape our future. Basically, anything you want to learn about today or see in the world, she's studying it. So join us today as we delve deep into her fascinating work, explore the fusion of art and innovation, the intricate dance of culture and nature, and the ever-evolving relationship between science and technology. She is also a research associate at the Center for the Study of Race, Gender, Class at the University of Johannesburg, and the founder of The Right Technique. Let's stay curious and learn about Anais on this episode of Learning with Lowell. Okay, so for people who do not know, what are Nootechnics?
Thank you. This is a very dear concept to me. The new technique is the combination of two words. The first one is techniques, as in techne, which means art, craft. It can also mean the way in which you handle a tool being kind of like the prolongation of a human organ or the combination, the relation to a human organ. So that's technique. But nous is a Greek word that defines both the spirit, the soul, the movement of the soul. And it's an interesting combination because it requires us to think whether our technique, our way of handling tools, is helping
Mhm.
to reach to our soul, to our purpose. And I found it particularly important to remind ourselves whether we are handling tools that are helping us get closer to our soul, uh, closer to this movement inside of us, this striving to be, this striving to become, this striving to be alive and be together.
At any point in this conversation, if you find value in it, please subscribe. It is hugely beneficial, and it tells Google and everyone out there that this is content worth watching. Thank you for everyone thus far who has commented, liked, subscribed, and told their friends.
Or whether technique is going on another direction. So the new techniques became a collective of thinkers in 2014, and it was a collective of researchers and artists. And we were really interested in trying to find ways in which sciences, the arts, and modalities of intellectual wisdom could interact. And so we picked this concept as a way to signal that we were interested in the soul.
Mm-hmm. It's really interesting because I think I don't e- I don't think you even need to struggle that hard to think that most tools that we're building nowadays don't do that. Don't reach that mile marker of getting us close to the soul or to our purpose. It almost feels like nowadays, it's like all of our tools are getting us further away from it, like social media, everyone feeling disconnected and stuff. Like we're like getting further away from it.
So it's both true, and at the same time, I think it's important to kind of maybe re-inject some ambivalence.
Hmm.
It's true because technology, which is the addition of the temporal dimension, the logos, the temporal dimension to techne. So the technology is really when a media is becoming the thing that is running by itself, or that is really shifting out the way we spend our days. It's not really a tool because the tool is usually you activating the tool as opposed to the tool having a becoming a temporal object, what we call a temporal object. So what is important is remind ourselves that the technologies are only what we do with them.
Hmm.
In itself, the technology can go in so many directions. And so where we gonna find the question of ethics, of values, of purpose. It's in the usage. Because right now we see a bit of a collapse between the question of the function of a technological device and its usage. The problem right now, the big problem right now, is that the technological devices that are really pullulating around us have such a narrow usage. And usually that usage directs a specific behavior. We should be, on the contrary, able to practice different usage and kind of be innovative. And usually that's what makes people much more happier when they are able to cultivate their own craft, their own way of relating to the tools, as opposed to the tool kind of dictating the way we should behave.
It's interesting. I was thinking, like, how would I operationalize like that concept of us using the tools versus the tools influencing us in that way? And I was thinking, like, maybe we have like a meta structure that goes into, like, we can like create like an AI generated template of some sort that like matches like our interests, that then plays into like how we access our phone and technology, so that you get like the right balance, so it's not like myopic in terms of being like a wholly one, or like you get like stuck looking at Instagram photos or something, or like what all these problems people are having. Apparently, kids, like young people, like TikTok and stuff's like really bad. Like it's like really messing up their like body images and stuff. So it's like, how can we? I was just wondering, like, how can I take this concept, which is it seems very true to me from what you're saying, and then take what we have and then meld it so that we can start like using it in the world. It seems like maybe AI, like this ability to like aggregate information and then tailor the information on a personal level, might be a way to like bridge that gap with like a bunch of tools, their function, and like how we want to interact with them. Because the people who are developing the tools typically develop them with a mindset of addiction, or like even like news, for instance, is about like how can you click and like get people's eyes to stay on it versus like maximize it for truth or truthiness.
Well, you're touching on many things here. So, and many many things that are really important. So I'm going to try to unpack a few things. The addiction is a symptom of the toxicity of our environment. In itself, the addiction is a way in which the technological environment in which we evolve has reached a level of toxicity where people are starting to develop new pathologies. Those pathologies are not so new. I mean, we are in 2023, and the first addiction center regarding gaming online was founded in the 1990s. So we already have 30 years of research around the way in which the use of certain devices can imply what we call a non-substance-based addiction. So an addiction that no longer has to do with a substance like alcohol or heroin or cocaine, but with a behavior. And in this question of addiction, there is really something that has to be taken seriously, which is the way in which the device itself should be regulated. Governments have a responsibility in not creating pollution. Government have a responsibility in the safety of their people, in the safety of their citizens. Whether it's pure water, it's a right, and I believe that there is a right for a non-toxic digital environment, and that's where the question of how do we think about the parameters of our devices as really having an impact on the milieu, on the space we share in the world, whether it is with our neighbors, or it is with our kids, or it is with our parents, grandparents, our teachers, etc. So there is that aspect of the question of the addiction, and I'm happy to develop more. There is the economic value of our attention, what we call the economy of attention. Our attention has a huge value now on the market. And this is very important to think in terms of a long genealogy of the evolution of the capitalist society. We are now called the fourth revolution. It's the fourth industrial revolution in the history of capitalism. And in that fourth revolution, which is about the advancements of digital technology as functioning for and within the market, it's calling into question whether we are able to create the foundation for a new political economy where technologies are questioned and for their impact on regulating the way in which citizens have access to a safe digital environment. You mentioned, body image. This is one symptom of the toxicity of these platforms that are feeding the pocket of very few people in the world. That's very important to remember. So while internet was really created as a peer-to-peer, as a bottom-up structure, as an open access structure, now we're seeing the morphing of this platform, of this network, into platforms that are implementing a certain form of toxicity in our environment. And when I say environment, I both say psychic, mental health questions. I say nature, which is the environment, because it's costing a lot of resources. It's costing labor, and it's very extractive on that level, and also an economic environment where it's dictating rules that the citizens have very, very little access to. So I believe that governments have a responsibility in regulating the parameters of some of the devices that have now surpassed in terms of power the nation state. This is one of the big questions. We are now in what I call with others in a digital empire.
Yeah. I think historically, like when the oil barons in the US, like in the Gilded Age, when I think of it in a similar way, like people with power influencing politics for their benefit, so they don't have to, pay regulations and stuff. And I don't think that's an alien concept in the modern world. And so I wondered to what extent, like governments will be able to adapt and apply changes and regulation into these markets, into this technology and internet space, to have a positive effect, like you're talking about, when the people who are currently benefiting from it being a certain way are going to like influence politics to be what they want it to be, or the regulation to be what it wants it to be. Usually it's like it takes like rioting or protesting to some extent to like get people, like the masses, what they want in terms of a government. Like in the I know more about the US. I think you know more about the France than me. But in the US, for instance, like a lot of labor rights happened in like the turn of the 19th century when like the oil people wanted like kids to work in the mines, etc., like terrible stuff. But then people started like protesting and saying like, "Hey, we're not going to work. We're going on strike." And that like for people to get like a 4-year work week or kids out of the mines and into classrooms, like people were like there were times where like they were literally shot and stuff in America So like it took like such a huge upheaval to the point of like people dying to like do these things that the people at the time really wanted to do, which is like, I want my kid not to go into a mine and get black lung by the time they're 18. Instead, I want them to go to college or high school and, you know, have a nice productive life. Which leads me to like this general thought of how can we have the governments do what so far governments tend not to do very well.
So as much as I say that this is the responsibility, I think that history has proven us that people can protect people
Mm-hmm.
when the state is failing to do so. And so I think that our current moment is definitely proving the importance of local organization, of organizing on a local
Mm-hmm.
level. Um, I believe that there are programmers and hackers and developers and thinkers, inventors and engineers that are totally ready and already developing ways in which we can connect and thus invest in each other outside of those giant platforms that are implementing a form of toxicity that people recognize. But it is like any drug, you recognize to a certain point the toxicity that it does. We are now reaching a level of um, of a crisis, and I think this is the climate crisis that is really pressing us to reconsider our principles, and our values, and our priorities. And I hear more and more people, and I think we are a majority of people wanting to make sense of our life in a
Mm-hmm.
different way, to share and develop meaning bonds as opposed to empty network driven uh, stimuli responses messages. And so I believe that we are seeing a shift in the way in which people are looking for meaning, and meaning in many ways, and meaning, and that the diversity of meaning that is implying that we should be able to develop different technique and different relationship to our technologies. Um, I have a lot of hope. Uh, I think we've been going through various wake-up calls in the past few years. And the more people I talk to and the more people I meet, and the more I can feel that there is this urge to make sense of what we do in a very radical way, in a way that is really putting forward the collective signification of what it means to be alive now. I think it's a great opportunity to be alive right now. We see the younger generation being so radically brave and inclusive, and actually outside of the inclusive exclusive dichotomy, they are innovative. They are not thinking in terms of the short circuiting capitalist tendency to just think about oneself. Uh, I can see a lot of projects that are driven by the pure necessity to think beyond the present moment, to invent a future that makes sense. And I believe technologies can be very useful for that. We just have to somehow reclaim our attention
Yeah.
and invest this in attention, which is one of the most beautiful value we have, to pay attention to someone, to a loved one, to a dear friend, to a neighbor, to a stranger, to a foreigner, and create our own network. And there are a lot of initiatives that are already working toward that direction. I don't think I will have had that same discourse 5 years ago. But now I see that there are a lot of initiatives and that somehow maybe individuals are able to see more and more how they can be part of this new trajectory. So while government should be responsible for implementing parameters that protect and create a safe environment where technologies are implemented and used for the better good, and basically the better good is like taking care of the climate crisis. I believe that there are slowly a bifurcation happening where every single people now are kind of feeling the need to reclaim new forms of signification.
It sounds like to what I know of philosophy, like the ancient philosophy was about how to understand the world and yourself in it in terms of almost like self improvement, like in the modern sense, like how to improve yourself, like the meditations and stoicism, versus like a lot of philosophy now is like is the soul separate from the body, like Descartes' dualism, like which is a little different. It sounds like the philosophy that you're working on right now is very much kind of in this almost in a similar ancient vein. And this once again, this shows my ignorance, but like in the sense that it's trying to develop a framework to help people reconnect to the meaning of their lives, versus like a Descartesian is your soul separate from your body type thing. It's more like not like self help in like a bad way, but like in a way helping people find their self.
That's very interesting. You're saying that I have this tendency to always try to find what's useful in different authors. And so I do not compartmentalize so much. I recently discovered the work of Averroes, which is this Muslim theologian jurist from the Middle Age. And he has this absolutely fascinating philosophy of happiness that has to do with a very specific, what I will call a very specific technique of the soul, where basically he is trying to tell us we have the capacity to experience our mode of existence is through experience. And then from these experiences, we move to the memory. So memory or our singularity is the experience we're going to go through throughout our life. So you are a singular person because of the experience you went through and the memories you have from those experiences. And so in phenomenology, this will be called retention. You know, you retain from the flow of experience a certain modality of creating a consciousness. And then you have a secondary retention, which is your memory, what you gain from that. So that's, you know, from middle age to the 20th century, that would be two different ways of thinking about what I see is being the same thing. But what is very different is that Averroes is going to offer a way for us to emancipate ourselves from the potential loop that this creates. Well, okay, I have an experience and I'm going to have a memory that's going to condition my next experience, and I'm going to have a memory and it's going to condition my experience. Because if you think in terms of the whole genealogy of trauma, we need to be able to repair and we need to be able to heal. And we really need to do it on a massive scale because history has proven, and especially the West has a responsibility in regard to the harm they've they've done and continue to do. And so Averroes is suggesting that we reclaim our capacity for fantasies and phantasm. When you have phantasm. No, that doesn't work. I'm trying with
Yeah,
the English accent.
I know what you mean. Yeah, I don't know what I know like to fantasize.
Yeah, to fantasize. But so to fantasize in with psychoanalysis, to fantasize is like, well, I have this object of desire, and I'm gonna just completely project, and it's gonna be my fantasy. It's gonna be I'm gonna fantasize around that. And he's saying something so much more interesting 700 years before. Is saying, no, our fantasies are the images we cultivate to
Hmm.
better make sense of our memory and our experience and redirect what we want to live, what we want to experience next. And I found it very interesting because it's calling a question, which is, what are our dreams as collective beings on this planet? What are we collectively dreaming of? And I feel like as long as we are not answering this question, the earth can go so bad, and politics can go so wrong, and we're not gonna gather. I find that the more we ask ourselves collectively, what would be our dream planet in 50 years?
Hmm.
I think we should start there, as opposed to say in 50 years the future is gonna be so bad. Well, okay, if we say that it is gonna be terrible for the majority of people that are already suffering from this capitalist extractive mode of governing life. And so I believe that we need to ask ourselves more often, is my dream and your dream looking on this at the same in the same direction?
Hmm.
For in 20 years, in 30 years, in 50 years, because we have the capacity. That's also, I don't believe that this is too late.
Yeah.
Nature and also some completely extraordinary people have proven that unless we're dead, it's too late.
Hmm.
So we have the capacity, and we saw that with nature during COVID. There is potential always.
It's really interesting the person you mentioned, this idea that of breaking generational trauma, what's happiness. Um, at the same time, like in America, for instance, I don't know how it is in your neck of the woods, but in America, like the average person can't afford like a $500 expense, and so it doesn't take much to have a $500 expense and like have it like really mess you up. I think like the number one cost of bankruptcy in America is like hospital bills, which is pretty terrible. And
Yeah.
so I was just thinking, generational trauma, a vision for the future, and in a world, at least in my neck of the woods, where a lot of people are looking like month to month for life. And then
Yes.
so it's like, how do you get people to have a vision 50 years in the future if they're concerned about, how do I save enough money so I can get my kid like a present for Christmas without it like making it so I can't afford milk in January. Um, and then if it's happening in America, which is generally like a pretty prosperous place, then what's it like for everyone else on the planet? When there's a lot of people who live in poverty or who can't. Like hunger is still a really big thing. So I wonder about these, like that type of thing. How do we achieve a vision when we're looking at the ground?
Absolutely. This is a fundamental question. I'm very happy you are asking it. We have for a long time measured happiness with economic access, economic progress, and technological progress. Actually, there are countries where the level of happiness is much higher than the first world power country, which is the United States. The United States has implemented what Bernard Stewart called a misery, a symbolic misery that is taking people to a level of poverty that has created powerlessness. The imbrication of the system means that there is no time to anticipate, to dream, to foster deeper attention to potential way out. And this is a systemic way in which the different ecology, what Felix Guattari calls the different ecology, which is psychic and environmental and economic, are really constrained to keep people enslaved to the economy of the capital, as opposed to an economy of anticipation, an economy that will foster imagination, that will foster dreaming. If you ask someone who is starving what they are dreaming about, they're going to be completely conditioned by their basic needs. This is the systemic problem of industrial capitalist societies, is that under the cover of providing technological progress, they have forgotten the basic need, which is emotional safety, physical safety, and everything that has to do with drinking good water, eating good food, and sleeping well. But those three most basic things are almost unsustainable in the United States. A doctor appointment can put you off for years just to go see the doctor, and this is a shame. That's why I call that the Western have forgotten to be shameful, because the depth of the harm done on bodies, on bodies that have suffered systemic discrimination to access to basic needs is out of this planet. We should have never allowed that kind of systemic implementation of suffering to happen. So I completely agree with you that this is one of the most important questions, but I think it is important to realize that this question of progress, of technological progress, also called economic progress, have lured us into taking it for happiness.
Mm-hmm.
We do not buy happiness ever, but starving, not being safe, knowing your loved ones are not safe, it's going to completely condition whether you're happy or not, obviously. But there is in the ideological tweak, how technological progress has been used as an alibi for the implementation of systemic powerlessness.
So for people who are living in this world, are there I guess, is there a way to escape helplessness and start like moving towards a direction of meaning in their life? Is there either in the philosophy you're developing or maybe in some like other people you've read to break out of the mold and start changing it because it's about I don't know how long capitalism has been around, but I think it's like a couple hundred years, like 300-400 years, something like that. Like so not it's not like we've had it for like thousands of years. Maybe like capitalism shifts. Like I don't know if you're a fan of like Star Trek, for instance. Like Star Trek, like they don't have capitalism in the future. It's like merit based improvements of yourself or something. Like your whole life is dedicated to improving yourself, and like that's how like your currency or something like that. Someone who knows Star Trek can like cite me on this. So how would someone break out of helplessness, or is the question how can we restructure society so that people aren't helpless in the first place?
So I am not gonna say the
Hmm.
obvious, which is, tax storage. That would be, I mean, if we could tomorrow, people would stop dying out of starvation tomorrow. This is
Hmm.
recently in France, just to give you an example, a very concrete example. One politician just agreed to give the 15 million euros that cover half of the expense we need in France. So this union that has been created maybe 40 years ago now, or maybe 30 years ago now, and that is a union that deliver food and free parcels of food for the more, the poorest. Um, with the inflation, people cannot give so much, and with the inflation, there are more people who really need it. So this guy came and did like a big TV everywhere in the media. He just gave 15 million. That only represents 0.0047% of his wealth.
Hmm.
So this is a marketing coup. It's not solidarity. I believe that if we implement radical solidarity and collaboration, collaborative economy, we can start going out of this trap, which is a very neoliberal trap where an individual is going to measure its success based on its economic ascension.
Hmm.
I believe that if we collaborate, meaning that if we mutualize our wealth, we can go much further and we can make bigger changes. Mutualizing our wealth starts by saying that if you are my neighbor and you have a hammer, I don't need to have a hammer. You have a hammer. I can use and borrow your hammer. If I have a car and I am your neighbor, you don't need to buy a car. We can mutualize my car and share. The
Hmm.
sharing economy is in a very radical way, the collaborative economy, the solidarity economy. Those should be the values dictating our economy.
Hmm.
Um, and we and we see it being implemented on a local level, on a neighborhood level. Uh, on a village, small town level. And that's where I believe that the the tools, digital tools, can be reclaimed to be used as platform for a sharing economy, for a collaborative economy. That will mean that we all invest first on a small level to create a pool of resources that can then start to create a cycle of good. And to create this pool, we could tax the rich. We could, yeah.
Hmm.
That's, so it's a very simple answer, but it goes the ramification of this kind of system can go very far because
Hmm.
it's a shift in paradigm in the way we think in terms we think of our resources. Then we don't think in terms of we don't think about our resources in terms of my relationship to a resource that I'm taking and I'm extracting from something else, from someone else, but more a relational way in which I'm going to take care of this resource. Because this resource can be useful to others for different usage and function.
Is it so I think the Nordics have like the Scandinavian models is basically like a higher tax burden with like which essentially results in like a little bit more socialism, but it's essentially just capitalism with more tax and like the tax gets set up so that you have like healthcare and all these other benefits. Is it that type of model that you see, or is it more like so is it like a more implementation of like a socialistic model, or is there like an if it's not, it's like some type of hybridization of like higher tax capitalism with the caveats that you mentioned, or is it the transition from capitalism to a different form of government like socialism or any other fun ones that exist out there?
So the problem is that, as you just mentioned, capitalism has become a form of governing
Mm-hmm.
people. That was not supposed to be the case. Once economy and politics are the same, then there is no way the state is gonna go out of its way to make sure the safety of its citizen is secured. Then you will have economic biases. So
Mm-hmm.
you just mentioned one of the problems. I believe that to give people a radical new trajectory, we need to transition out of capitalism as a mode of connecting resources and delivering uh, needs. Uh, I just I just came back from a colloquium that happened in France, and there were scientists and different intellectuals from different kind of disciplines. And someone is an astrophysicist, so a specialist of the cosmos, uh, helped us have a experience of the star. Um, and this moment is completely unproductive in terms of a capitalist regime where you should be able to produce, something that can be used within the um, capitalist framework. I believe that what should be valued more is is the way that we are completely intermittent. There are moments where we can be extremely engaged, and we can work, we can develop our craft, we can be very good at it, we can be very efficient, we can collaborate. And there are moments inherently we need breaks, we need time away, we need to recuperate, we need to reconvene with ourselves, with our loved ones. We need those ambivalent or intermittent rhythm. Capitalism is not about this rhythm. It is about the constant, what Jonathan Crary say this is 24/7. It's the end of this intermittent way in which the human beings, like animals, like anything that is alive, is constantly alternating with moments of deep connection and deep retrieval. And what we see in different non so industrial countries is that we see a different relationship to so-called unproductive time for relation, time for family,
Mm.
time for taking care, time for being able to see if something needs attention, needs care, needs time. And I think that there is something to say about having the right to unplug, having
Hmm.
the right to heal, having the right to rejuvenate, um, having the right to take a break should be part of a new system. And it should be almost a universal right as opposed to this machine that is extracting so much energy out of people and making them systematically sad. Because again, the question of why we are here is the question of how are we making ourselves happy.
Hmm.
And the consumerist game is actually not making people happy.
Yeah.
This is proven now many times
Hmm.
over and over.
Yeah, I read that like the focus on happiness is more of like a Western thing, where like in the East they're more on community. It's either community or families, like something. It's like it's not like the focus on like like Singaporeans or people in China is not on happiness. It's something about like the community or collective. Is the framework that you're proposing geared more towards like the West, or is it something that could be translated to like the East? Assuming that my the dichotomy is correct in what I'm saying. But I was reading like that, like our how we focus on relationships, like happiness for one. Well, I guess consumerism then happiness for one. Consumerism to achieve happiness in the West, and then happiness through like community, I suppose, is like what the East does.
So I think it will be interesting to have this conversation with people who are trained in diverse
Mm-hmm.
school of thought. And because I already know that when I was mentioning Averroes, it's not really happiness that he was using, it's beatitude. And beatitude, I would have to know the the word in Arabic
Mm-hmm.
that has then be translated into Latin and then being translated into French. And I think that it's important to keep the definition open, not to dictate what it will mean, but more as a field uh, for the possibility of morphing this into if it's peace, or if it is wisdom, or if it is family, or if it is a sense of home, or if it
Mm-hmm.
is a sense of now what we call happiness. Um, I think this is, much more interesting to see how can we develop practices that reclaim those forms of open values that are making individuals, both psychic and collective individuals, connect. Um, Usually, we say a baby when he's born, they are born, they need water, food, and love equally. You remove the love, they die. You remove the water, they die. You remove the food, they die. So we equally need that soul bursting feeling of love in a
Mm-hmm.
very concrete way. And I believe this is a value that has to be reclaimed. Um, I don't really care so much about technical progress if it
Mm-hmm.
is at a cost where we forget that we're not here to pile up knowledge. We're here to um, be loved and love and to be able to love. This is a text by Giordano Bruno that I really like. The guy who will discover the satellite of Neptune before Galileo Galilei. And then he has this very short book on bombs les liens. And, I really believe this is important to reclaim a society that creates an environment where we can desire, be desired, and an environment where that is desirable, that has the three components almost. So whoever exists can flourish, as opposed to, those very, very, very narrow definition of what someone should be, how someone should be, how someone should behave, how someone should be calm. Those kind of injunction that only serving this patriarchal, heteronormative, racist, capitalist society, which, this is all those categories were so beautifully explained by Bell Hooks, the fantastic Afro-American writer and activist and thinker, Bell Hooks. And I believe, I'm very inspired by this audacity of reclaiming that this is what is important is love in the first place and in the last place, I believe. Yeah.
And it sounds like the framework you're proposing has the ability to support different meanings for life. Like, for instance, like your meaning could be focusing on love. Maybe my meaning for my life is like focusing on building houses for people to love, for instance. Like so I think it sounds like the framework allows for multiple meanings of what life is, and it just supports people towards that meaning that brings them that feeling that you're talking about.
Exactly. This is, one philosopher that I really like. His name is Gilbert Simondon, and is someone who has worked on technique and technology. And he's saying, an individual needs to be part of the trajectory of a society to feel like they can exist. And the problematic with the Western paradigm of inclusion and exclusion that it is constantly telling, no, you're different, you're not in. Okay, you're in, but you kind of have to change this and that. This is not working. And it's not making people feel good. And it's not even making people feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
It's such it's a very ingrained paradigm of inclusion where the communication around that is commanding the life of the people. And I really believe that on the contrary, um, whatever practice, collective practice, individual practice that foster that sense of being part of the same trajectory for a vision for the future that really can foster how we make sense of this moment. And the earth is claiming us to react and collectively engage. And I know we outnumber them by far. So this is, if a carpenter is good at carpentry, might this be their love? And if a musician is good at musicking, might that be that love, but and good becomes this practice of fostering a place where we are no longer dictated. There is that, and there is also the responsibility. I feel like that's why I keep saying the West has a big debt, huge debt to the world. And this means that whoever is in a privileged position should know their place and should act in a way that they collaboratively act in solidarity at their own scale. And acting at their own scale is knowing what you're good at and diving deeper and deeper into what you're good at so you can spread more love and energy and resources and transmit whatever resource you have at your own scale. But that is creating a movement of deflagration. Um, and I believe that this responsibility of knowing your position is a responsibility that also call us to act according to this, possibility to create a new trajectory, to bifurcate and create a new trajectory where we can see long term collectively, as opposed to be dictated by this, futuristic end of the world. Well, we're gonna go there. If we continue, we're gonna go there. Only a few are gonna survive, and maybe not the one that we wish will survive. So yeah.
The best book on finding meaning when like that I've read so far is The Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor E. Frankl. I don't know if you've ever read it, but the other it's really good. It if you're in a good mood, read that book and it'll level you out. It's pretty sad too. The guy, the writer went through Auschwitz, and it's like him like journaling and explaining like how to find meaning no matter what happens, like comes your way. It's like, well, if you can find it there, it's like you can find it anywhere. But is there are there frameworks for finding meaning for people who haven't found it? Like I think a lot of people want meaning, want to find their meaning, but they don't know how to do it.
Um, I mean, I think that I will go back to the body as opposed to first going back to the brain.
Mm-hmm.
And in the body, I will go to, reclaiming a space for boredom, what Manouche the Morodi called, the bored and brilliant paradigm. When we don't let ourselves be bored, we let ourselves be bombarded by external stimulus that are not gonna always feed our soul. They're gonna just feed our time. That's why it's called feeds, maybe. But it's important to reclaim a sense of calm, so you can go back to yourself. And in that sense of calm, um, find the tiny, tiny movements that are calling you to know yourself. Of course, there are books that are extremely um, powerful, uh, but and I'm thinking about Hope in the Dark. Uh, I'm thinking about The Master's Tool Won't Dismantle the Master's House by Othello. This is a very, very wonderful book. There is the Discourse and Speeches by Toni Morrison, talking about a powerful voice that is helping you understand some of the systemic way in which culture and existence and experience are related. I mean, I am a complete lover of Spinoza, so it's pretty difficult to read, but once you read and reread and reread, you find a lot of pearls of wisdom. But I will say that it's so precious when an individual reclaims their sense of self by tuning down inner critic, but also tuning down the outside world that is constantly giving stimulus. and letting the mind wander. Mind wandering is one of the most fruitful activity one can do if they want to reinvent their environment and even invent projects. Um, and this is usually one of the first things that is being like cut. Don't let our mind wander. We want to be productive, or we want to receive responses and answers.
Hmm.
Mind wandering is actually a practice of the self and of the soul where you can reclaim a bit of the pieces of the puzzle of who you are, as opposed to have someone else tell you, okay, this is what you should do. You know, I think it's good to be very singular. But again, there are also real material conditions of existence. And sometimes it is one of the most difficult things when we are so preoccupied by our own needs that are not met. Uh, how to
Yeah.
mind wander when we are having something or when we
Hmm.
don't feel safe.
Yeah.
Always important to put back in consideration.
Yeah. The It's interesting. I haven't. I've heard like Neil Gaiman talk about how when he was writing, to like put himself in a state of boredom because then he'd start thinking of creative ideas, and he'd say like if you like sit down at the table, if you're trying to write, and just sit there and like let yourself be bored. So it's really interesting to hear this concept of boredom because I've heard meditation right as like which is really more like focusing on the present and kind of like relaxing your thoughts, and so it's an interesting concept of like borditation or something where like you deliberately just try to like, let your brain go wherever it wants to go. And if that we should like make that as a thing. I don't know, have an app. Because when you do it, do you literally just like I don't you have like a very beautiful environment behind you. So I imagine like that chair behind you, you could just sit there and like you don't put music on, you just kind of look out the window, like let your mind wander. Do you like journal it down? Like how do you how do you do borditation? I guess like how do you like how do you do that?
You just created a new concept. Um, so I do it in two ways, I
Hmm.
would say. The first way is through the body because I am very lucky to now have moved to the mountains. It's actually, as I said in the before the interview, this is not my home. It's a friend's house. It's in Paris, and I do not live in Paris anymore.
Hmm.
But I do live in the mountains. I'm very lucky to have decided to start over a bit, and I live in the mountains, and I walk paths that I know, and so
Hmm.
I'm not wondering where I should go and if this is dangerous. Uh, because I have lived in dangerous cities, in and this should be a right as well to feel safe walking, which is really not the case in many parts of the world. But luckily, I feel very grateful I can walk, and I do walk, and I let my mind wander. Uh, and uh, and there is something about my body indicating whether I'm relaxed, whether I'm happy, whether I am sad, whether I need uh, to push a little further and continue to walk. I do that and I do painting. It's a moment where I'm not dictating anything. I'm just letting my hands go and I continue to paint and paint and paint up until, for some reason, I don't know why, it's finished. And I think that we all have this ability to go back to a moment of childhood where we all found ourselves so bored that we have developed a few things with the little doodles or thinking and looking through the window or whether it was like the bus ride or whatever, where we felt also some form of comfort in reclaiming this ability we have to dream to think, to be creative, as opposed to be anxious, worried, concerned, concerned in the sense, of worried. I really think that creative thinking, mind wandering, boredom as meditation, how do you say that? Borditation, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
are powerful tools, not to be revalued because they do not fit in the productive driven values of the capital. I think it's kind of like where everything started for me when I was a theater teacher in the outskirts of Paris. If if you know, the outskirts can be very, very wealthy, extremely wealthy, and extremely poor. Um, Migrants packed into ghetto-like structures, and I was giving workshops to school babies, kindergarten, mostly kindergarten kids, and I grew up in a theater. My mom was a seamstress.
Mm-hmm.
She was um, working as a seamstress in theater. So for me, imagination was so fundamental to liberation, to freedom, to sense of freedom and self, to play, to playing with reality. It was like that everyone was, thinking this way. And I started to give workshops in the neighborhood where we grew up, and the kids that were now, 4 years old, they kept improvising with exactly the same thing they saw on TV.
Mm.
And it took me 2 months and a half to let them improvise with their own brain. 2 months of exercises, so to detoxify images from their brain so they feel that they can create and perform with. I will always remember this young kid that like performed, a blind person with a dog, and suddenly we could see the entire character of this little kid. And I was really shocked because I was also giving workshops in a very wealthy neighborhood for just 1 year to, someone, they needed someone. And the rich kids, they could improvise in 20 minutes. They had
Mm.
no problems imagining a world, telling you what is in this world, um, being someone else, feeling super comfortable navigating different types of character. And that social injustice ingrained already so early in the brain of the kids dictated the entire work I've been doing for the past 15 years. Because to me, it is so important that we reclaim our ability to imagine how we want to live. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
It's interesting because the one of my questions I was going to ask you is like, I wonder if you could like collectivize, like if you get like a bunch of people and like make them bored or inspire them to dream. And so it's interesting that's where you started, is how seeing how the different ways kids would dream. I wonder what it'd be like if you grabbed the parents as well and put them in the class, but then you randomized it so you didn't know like which ones were wealthy, which ones weren't, and then tried getting them to dream. If like because like apparently magicians they don't like doing magic in front of kids because kids don't make assumptions like adults do. Like there's a lot of what we see which is like we've talked about this a little bit, but like we condition our brain to see what we want it to see. That we're training ourselves to see something. And so kids don't have that. They'll ask like tons of questions like, is it the thumb? You have a fake thumb. You're putting it in the, like they'll like call out the thing because they don't assume they can't see it or like it's this or that. Uh, and so like magicians don't like doing magic in front of kids because kids can typically like pick out what the magic is, and it kind of like the magician's like sad. So I wonder what the difference would be with fully adult people who can't see, like they won't like their assumptions stop them from seeing the magic. What that would do to like see if you could get them to dream again, or like how quickly could you get them to dream from internal intuition versus like external intuition. That'd be kind of a fun experiment.
Yeah, I mean they are, exercises that are um that we call, constellation,
Hmm.
where it's a method. It's a healing method, actually. It comes from a psychologist in Germany, and then different school within that practice of thinking about our reality as a system of energetic flux, and where we are born, where we evolve, like a map, a constellation map of um, diverse relationships, energetic relationship. And I think that what is important is to see that in adults, most of the barriers that are in between, mind wandering and ourselves, or ourselves able to mind wander, is traumatic experiences. Because traumatic experiences in an adult will lead that person to repeat, compulsively repeat. You see that when, for instance, a friend of yours comes to say something, they had a bad encounter, or they had some, and they keep repeating the same thing. They
Hmm.
After 2 minutes, you got the interaction, but they need to repeat it and to
Hmm.
repeat it, and that's only what they see. They
Hmm.
haven't had a ability yet to extract themselves, look at it differently, and liberate themselves
Hmm.
from the experience. And so when it's just a small interaction, that can be healed. Well, we have a drink, we talk through it, okay, we feel better, or, we go have a walk, or, we do something. But if it's years and years of conditioning, then before we can mind wander, we kind of have to find a safe place. That's why I was saying we need to find places where the individual is at peace. Their needs are met. They can start to repair. They can start to reclaim and recuperate their energy to then mind wander, mind, dream, creative, think. Um, to go back to this example of the magician, I think it's I mean, it's another form of manipulation. And and there are many modalities in which, and our environment is manipulating us, manipulating us to sit a certain way on a chair by design, or responding to a certain, behavioral um, response. If we hear a ring, we know we need to go, get food or whatever. So it's a form of manipulating many behaviors. That says about our capacity to automatize. We automatize a lot of our behavior. We even don't even think about what we do in the daily gestures. It's becoming, part of ourselves. And that's where, to go back to technology, we need to be careful when we do not think about the way in which we interact with those interfaces, because then the technology becomes the magician. It makes us see whatever we want. They want to see us to see.
Hmm.
They make us do whatever they want us to do. So, it's very important to reclaim this childlike uh, way of questioning. of questioning out and also of being amazed and surprised. Yeah.
Yeah. The I think that for anyone who's like finding it hard to do this, I think maybe finding like a mental health counselor, assuming you have good insurance for it and whatnot, to like kind of help create that safe space so you can explore these concepts and then break that cycle would be really useful. Like I think maybe this is like a Western like an American thing, but there's like a lot of like I'm gonna do this myself. like there's like a bullet hole in my foot, like, I'm gonna bandage myself, but like it's hard to see the problem when the problem's in your brain. Like they're I don't know if it's you, but like sometimes I'll have a thought and I'll be like, oh, that's a great thought. Like this is great. But then if I write it down, it's like that was not a great thought. I'm glad it died
I
there.
think that it has happened to all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So write it out, get it out of your head, and if it's like you're still finding yourself there, like it's I think like maybe find a mental health counselor to help you with that. Similar to bordification, is like I think we're talking about like detoxing a little bit. Do you like limit your connection, like your interaction with the digital world or the internet or whatever, so that you can be bored or so you can be purposeful in the rest of your life? Do you find like any value in doing something like that?
Absolutely.
Mm,
So one thing that what I say is if you go on Facebook, on Insta, on YouTube, don't just absorb,
mm,
do something. Create a video, create a post, create um, take a pictures for you to, look at the reality differently. If you feel like you need to, but don't just take in to fill a void.
mm-hmm.
Because the problem is that this automatic behavior of taking in and looking at the feed and looking at the feed and scrolling and looking at the feed, it is by design making us sad. It is by design making us hooked.
Mm-hmm.
These are irresistible technologies. That's the name of the book, and I just don't remember the name of the author. But my advice is that it's the same for young kids. Do not let them just absorb. Let them create. Let them use those technologies to do something else with it. Because if they are only consumer, and if we are only consumer, then we are dispossessed from this singular relationship we can have with technology, and then with and our environment. So I have regiments around those very irresistible technology, and I often do break
Mm-hmm.
just to reclaim some focus and sense of self. Yeah.
Yeah, this is like good timing for me because like I didn't like in the course of this conversation I realized like wow I really do like stack my day so I don't have boredom. I'm always like oh I got to be like so focused on this. Like I wonder how I'm gonna experiment for like the next like 3 weeks. I'm like deliberately introducing it to my life because I see like mortification. That's the new this new term we coined. It's like something that can be really useful like detoxing and stuff. So this is uh like it's almost like as I'm listening, it's like oh wow I'm like doing all these bad things or potentially bad things. I'm gonna experiment to see how bad they are for my life. But I know we're coming to the end, so I'm gonna ask like the rapid fire questions to be respectful for your time. And you're welcome to do like pass if you find the question boring, and people in the comments can make fun of me for asking it. But so do you have? We've been talking about technology. Do you have a favorite tech gadget? Is there like a gizmo or gadget that you think is really cool?
Um, that's such a great question. So technology. Um, oh yeah, I mean, I bought an electric bike that has
Mm.
um because I live in the mountains, so I'm not powering through. I'm not good enough, and the the bike is now calling me to know my roads,
Mhm.
and the tiny little roads. And so I have downloaded this app that is called Genie, and it's layers of mapping of the world with all the little, secret paths to go through the mountains of many places in the world. And
Cool.
that is definitely my best gadget at the moment. Yeah,
Yeah,
Iphigenie. That, yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna check that out. Sorry. Yeah, that sounds really cool. The bike, especially because it's like it's preserving your knees, even if you were, lance arm strong enough to go up the mountain. I hear electric bikes like they make it so your knees don't get like blown out. So even if you could
They
do it,
make
it's like
it
probably
so easy.
yeah,
This
and
is
you're still pedaling
ridiculous.
too. Yeah, you're
Yes,
still
I am,
pedaling.
but
Yeah.
yes, but it's like a turbo.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I go very fast anyway. This is,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, this
Yeah,
is definitely my favorite device at the moment.
yeah, I'm gonna check out the app, and I've been wanting to get an electric bike, but it's very flat in the Midwest, as you know. So it's like yeah, so it's like I need to find the mountains to use it. The I actually answered my next one, which is what app can't you live without? You probably that app that you just mentioned is probably the one you pretty can't live without. Is there any other one?
I use Signal instead of WhatsApp. And this is
Hmm.
my communication tool with my friends that are abroad. And Signal is really incredible. And so I recommend this app, and I recommend everyone to use apps that preserve their data and
Hmm.
communication. So Signal, yes.
Great. I'll check it out because I use WhatsApp, but I don't like it. Like I I'd rather just someone just email me because I'm old and I have very stubby fingers. So, but I'll check out Signal because I think I've read that the WhatsApp you're like being data mined pretty intensively, where Signal they're like priority. I think they even have some components of it open source if I remember correctly. So yeah, I'll have to check that out as well. Do you have any tech pet peeves?
Um, so something that is really like something I hate that you
Yeah, yeah. It-
um
usually it's like it can be quite petty too. It's like maybe I don't know, like the co-working equivalent would be like someone who chews with their mouth open, like a foot away from you. Like that's a pet peeve.
uh I guess I heard no, I actually I really, yeah, I don't, because the one that I don't really appreciate, I know they have nothing so much to offer to humanity, so I know they will disappear. And the others, I just wait until people use them for another usage than what they are dictated to. So I believe that in all technologies there is something that can be retrieved
Hmm.
and that can be developed, that can be useful. So I don't think I have one.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. It all depends how we use things. Again, I don't know.
Yeah,
Probably. Yeah.
that's fair. And then you've recommended a bunch of books, so I'll skip that one because normally I ask people for book recommendations, but there's been like books the whole time, so that's great for me. And then what would be so people are really interested in what we've talked about today. You have a website. I think you have two websites. We have a website and a service, and a website with a service. Is there one place to stay up to date with all your work?
Yeah, there is anaisnony.com, and that's where you can find a lot of my written works. Um, I am setting up other channels for people to be able to access more digestible forms of work. And so, yeah, I will say anaisnony.com, or for the creators, thinkers, people who want to explore mind wandering, they can check out my website, which is called The Right Technique.
Hmm.
And this is really a way to, reclaim focus and yeah, get some ideas on the page collectively. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The service you makes that you do makes more sense now that we've had this entire conversation. It's basically like the distillation as a service of what you believe for the future, which is really cool. Then you've answered all my questions. I want to thank you, Anais. I just want to feel like now I'm like worried I'm not gonna say your name right, Anais, for coming on the show today.
Yes, yes, Anaïs, yes, you said it perfectly the first time, and yes, this is Anaïs. Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for the invitation, and I feel like the time passed very fast. So yeah, and thank you for your questions, and yeah, thank you for setting up this YouTube and creating this place for people to share their ideas. So thanks for having me.